In this session, we will continue our discussion on robot kinematics. In the last couple of sessions, we had discussed about forward kinematics. So from this session onwards, we will discuss about the inverse kinematics, particularly about the existence and uniqueness of solutions. So first of all, we will discuss about the inverse kinematics, then about some real life applications of inverse kinematics, then the issue of solvability, existence of solution and multiple solutions which are associated with inverse kinematics, then what do we mean by reachable and dexterous workspace, and finally what is the method of the solution. So as discussed in the previous session, forward kinematics is the mapping from joint angles to end effector pose. So where these joint angles theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 are given, and we can calculate the xy position of the end effector in Cartesian space. In the inverse kinematics, the end effector pose is given to us and we are supposed to calculate the joint angles theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 which are required to obtain that particular configuration. So as I mentioned, forward kinematics represents the mapping from R space to theta space, where R represents a vector in Cartesian space which is written as x, y, theta in planar case, and theta represents a vector in joint space representing theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 or maybe more depending upon the degrees of freedom of the particular manipulator. Whereas in the inverse kinematics, given the desired position and orientation of the manipulator tip relative to the base, so this is the manipulator tip and we are talking about this which is the base of the manipulator, we can calculate the set of joint angles theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 which will achieve this particular configuration explicitly. And next point is that inverse kinematics involves highly nonlinear equations which have multiple solutions. So let's discuss the importance of inverse kinematics, because in most of the real life applications it is the inverse kinematics which is of more use to us, because in most of the cases we know the trajectory a priori and we need to know the set of joint angles which are required as a function of time to track this trajectory. So let's take the example of a multi-degree of freedom robot which is trying to assemble this pin inside the hole. And the trajectory which it is going to follow is known a priori, which can be calculated using the inverse kinematics. The next example shows the robot doing a painting, where again the painting it is not doing as autonomous system or intelligently, where what points needs to be dark and what points to keep light, everything is known a priori and the robot has to follow that trajectory. And finally we can take the example of a gait cycle, where there is an exoskeleton which has to be worn by the user, and in order to assist the user with this normal gait cycle, the exoskeleton has to generate the trajectory of normal gait cycle. So this is again inverse kinematics, where the hip angle, knee angle and ankle angle needs to calculate so that the gait cycle can be achieved perfectly. So the first issue comes with the inverse kinematics is the solvability, which means that whether we are able to solve the solution or not. So consider an arm with 6 degrees of freedom, where the transformation from the tip of the manipulator to the base is given, which is like 0t6. So the figure shows a 3 degree of freedom manipulator, whereas we are talking about a 6 degree of freedom manipulator, because with 6 degrees the end effector can be placed in any arbitrary position as well as in orientation. So for any such transformation which represents the transformation from the tip to the base, there are basically 16 entries, and out of these 4 entries are trivial. So there are 12 equations and we have 6 unknowns in the form of theta 1, theta 2 up to theta 6 as the unknown joint angles. So out of 12 we know these 9 entries represents the rotation matrix, and out of these 9 equations only 3 equations are independent. So these 3 equations added with the 3 equations of tip position will lead to 6 equations in 6 unknowns, which represents a completely solvable system. Next comes the challenges. So the first challenge in the inverse kinematics is that it deals with nonlinear transcendental equations which are very difficult to solve. The next comes the existence of the solution, because the target which the tip has to track must belong to the manipulator workspace. Then the inverse kinematics system involves multiple solutions. Out of those multiple solutions, which solution the algorithm should prefer to move ahead, that is also a challenge. And finally, the singularity issues, because in the workspace there are many singular points. Singular points are points where the robot loses 1 degree of freedom and the joint radius goes to infinity. So for the solution to exist, the target must belong to the manipulator workspace, which basically represents the volume of space reachable by the end effector. So the workspace basically is of two types: dexterous workspace and reachable workspace. So first of all, dexterous workspace. It is the volume of space reachable by the end effector with all possible orientations, whereas the reachable workspace is the volume of space that the robot can reach in at least one orientation. So to understand this, let's take the example of a 2 degree of freedom robot. So like see over here, we have 2 degree of freedom having length L1 and L2. So in the first case, when L1 is equal to L2, the total reachable workspace is basically the disk having radius 2L1. So if we take this as a robot, so we can see over here, so this is a typical workspace, and any point in this, so if you mark any point, it can be reached in either one or two orientations. The points on the boundary can be reached only by one orientation, whereas the point within this workspace can be reached in maybe two orientations. But is there any point which can be reached in all possible orientations? So that is the origin, because over here you can see if this is a robot which will be, let's say, having equal lengths, L1 and L2 are equal, and it will be folded back. So now if you rotate the angle theta about 360 degrees, theta 1, so here you can see that the origin can be mapped in all possible orientations. So that's called as the dexterous workspace. So if L1 is equal to L2, the reachable workspace is the whole disk having radius 2L1, whereas the dexterous workspace is the origin. But if L1 is not equal to L2, so then in that case the reachable workspace will represent a ring. So let's say there are two links, so in that case you can say, so this is the outer radius, and if now the manipulator is folded back over here, so this is the inner radius. So it will represent a ring having inner radius as L1 minus L2 and the outer radius as L1 plus L2, and there is no point in the workspace which can be achieved in all possible orientations. So the dexterous workspace is a null space. So dexterous workspace is a subset of the reachable workspace, and while calculating these two workspaces, we have taken the assumption that both the joints can take values from 0 to 360 degree, which is a rare occurrence in real life. So we can now discuss the factors which affect the workspace. So the first factor is the joint limits. So with joint limits, the subset of the full 360 degree workspace is reduced. So let's take the example of theta 1 taking full 360 degrees and theta 2 taking only 180 degree. So let's take the example of a robot. So where, let's say, this represents theta 1 and this represents theta 2. So if theta 2 can take 180 degree only and it cannot go in this direction back, so in most of the cases it can take this kind of orientation, where this kind of orientation is not possible because theta 2 has the joint limits as 0 to 180 degree. So one of the orientation will be cut down. The next comes the degrees of freedom. Typically, in order to position any tool in 3D space, 6 degrees of freedom are required, but a manipulator having less than 6 degrees of freedom cannot attain general goal positions and orientations in 3D space. So we can take the example of a planar manipulator. So any planar manipulator, if it has a target which is out of the plane, so the planar manipulator will not be able to achieve that target. Next is the tool frame transformation, because if you see in the last session on forward kinematics, we have seen that the typical forward kinematics ends at the wrist configuration, whereas the tool, the length of the tool, or the maybe let's say any robot can handle or can hold different kinds of tools. So those tools are never be a part of the forward kinematics, but the tool tip is generally considered in determining the reachable workspace. So we can perform the tool frame transformation independently to calculate the workspace. And finally, we can say that if the desired position and orientation of the wrist frame is in the workspace, then at least one solution exists. Next comes the issue of multiple solutions, which is another challenge because it is very difficult for the algorithm or the system to decide that which particular solution is to be preferred. So let's take the example of a planar arm with 3 links. It has a large dexterous workspace. So to attain any particular configuration, here you can see, so let's say this is the target position and we are having, let's say, theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 as a 3-link manipulator. So this is one of the configuration, and the dashed one shows the alternate configuration which this robot can take in order to keep the end effector at the same location. So you can see over here the robot has 2 solutions to achieve this, or even you can see the robot can reach like this way, it can reach like this way, it can reach like this way. So it has many solutions. So which solution the algorithm should prefer? So either this one or this one, that is the concern. So in order to deal with, we can set some criteria to select the solution. So the first one is the closest solution. So which means that algorithm prefers minimum joint movement to go from A to B, provided the present position of the manipulator is known a priori. So like, see, if the manipulator has to choose out of this solution and this solution, based on the basis of closest solution, this solution requires minimum joint movement as compared to this solution, so algorithm should prefer the top solution. Then comes the movement, that as we know that for any particular robot like Puma robot, there are first 3 as the 3 major axes, which may represents the movement of the shoulder, upper arm and lower arm, and the next 3 are called as the minor axis, which represents the movement of the wrist. So if any target point can be achieved with the movement of the minor joint axis, it should be preferred. Next comes the obstacle avoidance, because if let's say there is some obstacle over here, so certainly the upward solution is not possible because it will result in hitting the obstacle. So in that case, the algorithm should prefer the second solution, or the algorithm can be designed to choose the solution which results in minimum torque requirements. The number of inverse kinematic solutions also depend upon the number of joints, link parameters and their allowable range of motion. So more are the non-zero DH parameters, more are the number of solutions to the problem of inverse kinematics. So we can see in the table below that for a typical Puma robot, the link length A1, A3, A5 are all 0, then the number of solutions are 4. If only 2 link lengths are 0, then the solutions will increase to 8, and it will increase to less than equal to 16 if only 1 link length is 0, and it is equal to 16 if all the link lengths are non-zero. So here we can see that as there are more non-zero DH parameters, there are more solutions to the problem of inverse kinematics. Finally, we have the method of solution. So we don't have any general algorithm which can solve the set of nonlinear equations. The term solvable means that any algorithm should be able to find all the multiple solutions. So in that case, based on their nature, the solutions are broadly classified into 2 categories. The first one is called as numerical solutions, which are being iterative in nature and does not give any assurance to provide all multiple solutions, and they are computationally expensive and hence slower in nature, and because of the above 2 reasons, they are generally not preferred if the closed form solutions are available. So the next category is the closed form solutions, which are basically the solutions based on analytical expressions. It is possible to obtain an analytical solution. Certainly this solution will provide all the multiple solutions, they are extremely fast and they are computationally less expensive as compared to the numerical solutions. So the closed form solutions can be further classified into two categories, which is algebraic solutions and geometric solutions. So these two things we will cover in the next session. So these are the some references. Thank you.